In my humble view, lights out.
Please welcome back the next president of the United States.
I think it's going to be a blowout, actually. I don't think it's going to be a close race. I think there are going to be those Republicans that just vote for Harris.
It'll be tied on Election Day, as always it will. The polls will be tied, and then he'll lose.
You call us trash? Oh, J.D. Vance, you just effed up in a way that I've never seen in my political life, and I worked for Sarah Palin.
Well, that didn't exactly turn out the way they were so sure it would, did it? Somebody needs a refund on their crystal ball, and maybe a reality check while they're at it. I mean, there's La La Land, and then there's whatever this is, the so-called all-knowing, expert in everything grounded media. They're so delusional that even a tight slap in the form of Trump's win hasn't woken them up from their slumber. Let's look at 20 media meltdowns over Trump's victory. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride as we drink these salty liberal tears. 1. The View. Let's kick things off with The View, the greatest mind-numbing show on the planet. Honestly, I lose about 10 IQ points every time I watch it, so fair warning, proceed at your own risk.
These different demographics and these assumptions of where they're going to go. Latinos in Texas, a district that's 97% Latino, went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the border. The border crisis is on their doorstep. And they were begging people to care about it for years. We need to take some lessons.
That's what that was.
The lessons are not.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Oh my gosh, it's Whoopi.
On The View, there's absolutely no room for common sense or rational thinking. None. The lady in pink seems like she might have a clue, but nope, the rest wouldn't dare let that on their show. Instead of a little self-reflection after losing, they want to do this.
Well, it would help if we could regulate social media, because one of the biggest offenders is D.C. and Congress have not been able to do one thing in regard to the rogue corporations of social media.
Not going to get any better with Elon Musk.
Pretty bold, huh? Sounds a bit fascist, doesn't it? Not exactly the free speech warriors they claim to be. One loss to the so-called boogeyman. Oops, my bad. 2 losses, and they've officially lost their marbles. 2. Sunny Hostin. Next up, Sunny Hostin. Sure, she's a regular on The View, but her level of delusion, that deserves a special spot on this list. Let's see what she has to say about Trump's...
Profoundly disturbed. I think if you look at the New York Times this morning, the headline was America makes a perilous choice. I think that in 2016, we didn't know what we would get from a Trump administration, but we know now. And we know now that he will have almost unfettered power.
Yes, we do. And it will not be anything like the last 4 years. And that is exactly what the American people have voted for.
I worry about the working class. I worry about my mother, a retired teacher. I worry about our elderly and their Social Security and their Medicare. I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have. And I remember my father telling me many, many years ago that I was the first person in his family to enjoy full civil rights. And now I have less civil rights than I had when he told me that.
Wait, what rights is she even talking about? They just lost again and still haven't learned a thing.
I'm only disturbed that the 14th Amendment of the Constitution did not prevent someone who participated in an insurrection from becoming president of the United States.
No, he did not. We all saw the J6 speech, and don't even get me started on those undercover agents running around.
I think that going forward, the convicted felon box on employment applications better be taken off, because if you can be the president of the United States, then you should not be prevented from employment in this country. Because I remember applying for my jobs as a federal prosecutor, and there was a box for convicted felons. And so that box better be taken off.
How about you stop making up false charges to go after political opponents? How about you stop weaponizing the judiciary to destroy your political opponents? Just a wild idea.
And I think our healthcare system is now at risk. I think
no fluoride for anyone.
Yeah, economists have made clear that he's going to increase the debt by $7.75 trillion. I'm worried about mass deportation.
You should absolutely be. If you're unvetted and entered the country illegally, you should be worried. The door swings both ways. Go back, come through legally, and you're more than welcome.
I'm surprised at the result, but I'm not surprised. As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy.
You're absolutely right. She had no policies, just buzzwords. DEI isn't a qualification to become the president of the United States. I'm curious, why do you think Trump won?
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, vote.
Oh, well, uneducated white women and Latino men, give yourself a pat on the back.
I think the more relevant question, actually, is what is wrong with America? I think what is wrong with our country? What is wrong with this country that they would choose a message of divisiveness, of xenophobia, of racism, of misogyny over a message of inclusiveness?
She is very inclusive. I'll give it to her. She included everyone in the blame game. Whole of America is wrong, except her and her view buddies. 3. Joy Reid. Next up, the ever-joyless Joy Reid. Let's see what pearls of wisdom she's got for us this time.
Pure Project 2025 in miniature in Florida, and that kind of extreme, sort of extremist, right-wing, fascist-type government in Florida, does that make it a more attractive place?
Apparently, it does. Just ask AOC. She chose it as her vacation spot during peak COVID. Hypocrisy? That's putting it mildly. Honestly, someone hand these folks a big, fat dictionary because they clearly have no idea what fascism even means. Nevertheless, let's see how critical she is of Harris for losing to the Boogie Orange Man.
And so what you've seen in the last couple of weeks, if this is an audition for managing a complex organization like the United States, Kamala Harris has passed the audition flawlessly. This has been, in many ways, a perfect campaign, a brief, and she had barely any time to put it together.
Of course. A woman who struggles to string a coherent sentence without heavy tutoring or a teleprompter is somehow the most qualified to run the most complex organization on Earth. And then they wonder why nobody takes them seriously. Spoiler, this is why. 4. Jimmy Kimmel. I'll be honest, I used to like Jimmy Kimmel, but now he's gone full insufferable. Here, he is before the elections.
Fragile little snowflake. What a blowhard. He's a blowhard and a snowflake. He's a blowflake is what he is. He should change the hats to say, "Make America Wine Again," Mawa.
Well, Jimmy, that didn't age too well, did it? But hey, your wish did come true.
More than half of this country voted for the criminal. Still trying to figure out what happened.
Forget the hats. Someone needs to print a giant t-shirt that says, "Make America Wine Again," with Jimmy's face front and center. It'd sell out faster than tickets to his next pity party.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth.
The truth. Really? The truth is, the only people who had a terrible night were the left loonies. For the rest of us, it was spectacular. 5. Stephen Colbert. Let's move on from one late-night host to another. Spoiler alert, the hypocrisy only gets better.
All day yesterday, I was walking around proudly wearing my I voted sticker. Today, I wore my I am questioning my fundamental belief in the goodness of humanity sticker.
The sticker you really need to wearing is, I'm a hypocrite and I know it. Honestly, it'd pair nicely with your monologues.
This is democracy. That's democracy with a capital duh. And in this democracy, the majority has spoken, and they said they don't care that much about democracy.
Wait, let me get this straight. People exercise their democratic right to choose their president, and that somehow means they don't care about democracy? How delusional can you get? And honestly, how dumb are your writers?
If you watch this show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great. Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you this one. Anyone willingly watching your show probably isn't doing great. But instead of another episode, they should book a therapy session. 6. Jen Psaki. Now, here's Jen Psaki jumping in to let us know who the next president is and her thoughts on the whole situation. Spoiler alert, we don't see her, but trust me, her voice alone tells you how hard this is for her to swallow.
Kornacki, I just have to jump. Steve Kornacki, I just have to jump in. And you've been predicting this. We've been waiting for it. And we do have some breaking news from the decision desk. NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House as this country's 47th president. And for so many of you watching right now, that news is, to say the least, a lot to digest. I understand that personally. After he lost 4 years ago, he refused to accept the outcome and incited a violent insurrection on our nation's capital. He's campaigned while facing criminal indictments related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 results, and he's run as a convicted felon.
Maybe, just maybe, if you guys hadn't gone after him so shamelessly, he wouldn't have won so decisively. Something for you to chew on, Jen.
During this campaign, he has also promised to essentially be an authoritarian leader, to use power like no American president ever has before.
No American president has ever used before. Quick history quiz. Who was the 45th president and what powers did he use?
And wield that power to go after his political enemies.
Just like you did to him. Maybe it's karma if he does.
This is a man who's also bragged about overturning Roe v. Wade and stripping away women's bodily autonomy.
No, he hasn't. And maybe it's time you stop lying.
He's promised to conduct mass deportations to crack down on the rights of millions of Americans. Donald Trump is an anti-democratic force, but he's just been elected democratically in our country.
Yes, he will be a dictator just like he was in 2016. Newsflash. Dictators don't let journalists openly trash them on national TV. You might want to, I don't know, investigate what real dictators do. That's what journalists are supposed to do, right?
And here's what might be the hardest part to hear, but we have to talk about and we have to say, and it is a hard part to digest for all of us. But we have to be honest about what we saw in this election. Donald Trump was elected by expanding his support over a number of key groups.
And finally, a rare moment of truth. Let's leave it there before you ruin it. 7. Cenk Uygur. Next up is the king of epic meltdowns, Cenk Uygur. Now, I've got to say, he did far better this time compared to his 2016 performance. I guess experience makes you wiser. Or, scratch that, just a little more bearable.
NBC News, ABC News, and CNN have all called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. This election is over. Donald Trump is going to be the 47th president of the United States, and he has won re-election. So buckle up, brace for impact. We're going to have 4 years of anarchy and chaos.
How about the destruction and chaos of the last 4 years?
My prediction, which is not a bold one, is they're going to rob the place blind.
How dumb do you think we are? How much exactly did Trump rob during his last time as president?
Oh, there will be no brakes in the car. Steve Bannon's back. All the ghouls and goblins of the first administration that stayed through all of his corrupt and ridiculous demands are back. None of the people who had any sanity are back. And their first priority is going to be take. Last time Donald Trump drove up the debt by 40%, he added $8.4 trillion.
Oh, sure. Let's just ignore the minor inconvenience of a global pandemic that literally shut the country down. Please, do continue.
Because he doesn't care. He's going to give away a couple more $1 trillion in corporate tax cuts.
And bring jobs back to America. I'd take that any day over sending trillions to Ukraine or spending taxpayer dollars on illegals while homeless veterans are left out in the cold.
They'll break so many things in this country. There is no upside to that. It's a disaster. But I cannot imagine a scenario where Donald Trump does a good job and a Republican gets elected in 2028.
Thank you, Nostradamus. We really hope this prediction of yours turns out just as accurate as your others. 8. Rachel Maddow. Let's move on from the king to the queen. Rachel Maddow.
State's economy is the envy of the world. Yeah. The inflation numbers, the economic growth numbers, the fiscal numbers, the U.S. standing in the world numbers are all off the charts positive. Even the freaking stock market, right? All off the charts positive.
Says the woman with a net worth of $120 million. Of course, she knows how great the economy is for the common man, more than the common man. Honestly, the disconnect is almost impressive. No wonder people are fed up with these folks. They've practically turned being out of touch into an art form. 9. Joe Scarborough. Now we have Joe Scarborough chiming in with his 2 cents on why Kamala Harris didn't win.
Would you like me to say it? I think want to say it. Well, if she were a 6'4" white man from Arkansas or Caribbean, from Florida, and she ran a good middle of the road campaign talking about reaching out, do you think she would be losing by that much? If she could like chew tobacco and carry a shotgun and talk about football and be a guy's guy, I mean, you tell me.
Will these people ever take responsibility? It's always someone else who's to blame for their failures. Personal accountability? Nope, not in their playbook. But don't worry, Joe's not done yet.
Garbage. Who raised these people?
Yeah.
Because they were not raised by anybody in my neighborhoods that I grew up, any middle-class neighborhoods that I grew up in. These people were not there. They were not raised. I mean, they weren't in the classes I went to growing up in elementary or middle or high school or college. They just weren't there. That wasn't the America I grew up in. Again, who are these people? Where are they coming from? And who raised them? And how did Donald Trump twist their point of view so much in 9 years?
Maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't America. Maybe you've changed, Joe. You don't belong to the America you grew up in because you've spent years telling that America what it should think and do. And guess what? That America didn't like it. 10. Jake Tapper. And how could this list be complete without Jake Tapper? Trust me, this clip will be studied 100 years from now to understand how bad Kamala Harris's thumping defeat was.
Let's go away and see if there's anything on the east side there. Literally nothing.
That reaction says it all. It perfectly sums up this election. 11. Chris Wallace-Jake summed up the election perfectly for Harris. And now, here's Chris Wallace breaking down what it all means for Trump.
Wins a contested primary, and this is his party. This is these voters.
Not just his party.
What?
It's not just his party now, and that's
it's his country.
I mean,
well, Chris, we don't do kings in this country anymore. We said no to that over 2 centuries ago. 12. CNN. And here is the moment CNN was hit with the cold, hard truth. All their efforts to usher Kamala Harris into the Oval Office was in vain.
History this morning, 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday, that Donald Trump has won the presidency for a second time, this time after having served for 4 years, then disputing the 2020 election, and then, of course, rallying a mob to the Capitol to try to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power there. Americans deciding to send him back to the White House for a second term.
Someone, please free this poor woman. The pain is so visible it's practically radiating off her face. You've got to feel for her. This level of disappointment should come with hazard pay. 13. CBS. Now, here's CBS going through the exact same pain as CNN.
This will usher in potentially an unprecedented era in American history to have someone who believes firmly that he has total presidential power in terms of official acts based on the Supreme Court ruling earlier this year, does not have to serve in prison despite being convicted in a criminal trial, and despite pressuring his own vice president to overturn an election, has been warmly embraced by the party, the Republican Party once again, and won the presidency.
Okay, that's enough. There's only so much of this I can take. It's like they're all reading from the same script. Zero originality, just copy-paste despair. Let's move on. 14. CNN? And here's another gem from CNN. Just dripping with logic.
There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country.
So let me get this straight. These same racist and sexist people voted Barack Obama into the White House not once, but twice, and then Joe Biden in 2020? That doesn't add up. Honestly, they're not very good at being racists and sexists, are they? Maybe someone should give them a proper tutorial. 15. MSNBC. If CNN has made this list, MSNBC can't be far behind.
Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. That is what it appears happened in that state.
So white women are the worst now? Interesting pivot. Didn't we already trade white dudes for Harris in exchange for these white women? Someone needs to crunch those numbers.
Well, a good chunk of the American voter wanted to take their country back, and we will soon see what that means. There are levels of sexism and racism that clearly a lot of people in this country are willing to tolerate, which is also something that, you know, we may have woken up in the same country in a sense, but that becomes much more clear this morning.
I don't know which America you woke up in, but I woke up in one that's on its way to being great again. 16. Jonathan Capehart. Next up, we've got Jonathan Capehart, who just can't wrap his head around the idea that people might not think exactly like he does.
And to me, I'm mystified in some ways, simply because we're talking about a twice impeached, 4 times indicted, convicted on 34 felony counts former president.
How many times did you rehearse that line in front of the mirror, Jonathan? Be honest.
That's one bucket. Then in another bucket, you have all of the things he's been saying on the campaign trail that gets to the decency that the woman was talking about in that last report, and how she wanted to vote for Vice President Harris because she didn't like that Madison Square Garden rally.
Ah, the infamous Nazi rally. I was wondering when that would make its inevitable appearance.
I am mystified that despite all of that, he's gaining support compared to 2020.
Here's a thought. Maybe it's you who's in the dark here, Jonathan. The rest of us are mystified that you can't see what's crystal clear. Kamala Harris was a horrible candidate. Maybe, just maybe, people disliked her more than they disliked Trump. Wild concept, huh?
And it gets back to something I said earlier at some point, one of the hours ago, that who are we as a country? And we're starting to find out. And from what I'm seeing right now, I'm not sure I like it.
But hey, despite your deep dislike, we're pretty sure you'll continue to mystify us by sticking around in this country.
In this country.
I can't help but wonder if the American people have given up on...
Yes, they have. And that's why they showed up in droves to vote and exercise their rights. 17. Jon Stewart. Some people, no matter their political leaning, manage to remain great. And Jon Stewart, he's one of them.
Send a quick message to all the pollsters, the election pollsters. Me. I don't ever want to from you again, ever. I don't ever want to hear, we've corrected for the overcorrection of the voters. You don't know about and I don't care for you.
Now that is a lefty I can actually agree with. He's honest, logical, and willing to call it like it is. If only the rest of them followed his lead, we'd have a far better political system and a lot fewer meltdowns to talk about. 18. Van Jones. Here's Van Jones making what seems like a smart observation, but with a touch of misdirection. Let's call it a masterclass in cleverly disguised misinformation.
The thing I think is most important to remember is the people who said that he was a Hitler lover weren't Democrats, they were Republicans. People who said that he was a fascist weren't Democrats, they were Republicans who worked for him. And so it's not just these elite Democrats over here, poisoning the well. You had a pretty broad consensus from Chomsky to the Cheneys, that was very, very concerned and remains concerned. And so I think it's not just on us to stop calling names. I think it's up to him to, as Allison said, with deeds show that he's not going to be those things.
Well, you said it. It's not just the elite Democrats. It was just the elites.
Kudos to Scott Jennings for catching that one. Van's attempt at spinning the narrative was slick, but Jennings was just a touch smarter.
It's not the elite that's going to pay the price. It's people who woke up this morning with a dream and are going to bed with a nightmare. And those people deserve to be respected and held and talked to. Those are the people who are going to pay the price for whatever Donald Trump decides to do.
And Van, you're absolutely wrong on this one. The elites are going to pay. Elon and Vivek are already on their way, riding in on their Doge, no less. 19. The Breakfast Club and Native Land Pod. We've been too focused on the legacy media. Let's not forget the new media. Here's something truly extraordinary from the Breakfast Club and Native Land Pod.
There are people who are voting for Donald Trump because Hulk Hogan shows up or Kid Rock shows up.
Maybe not them, Elon Musk.
Who's not even registered. You think Elon Musk has delivered votes for Trump? By his support?
I do.
So you think there were people who were, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. Oh, but wait, Elon Musk supports him. So what about?
Is she even serious? The man not only launches rockets into space, but catches them with massive chopsticks. And I'm supposed to ignore him and instead take advice from a podcaster who uses his platform to crib about it? Yeah, no thanks.
A lot of people have been raving about the interview he just did with Joe Rogan.
Oh my God, it's all over everywhere.
I haven't watched it, but they're saying they was like, yo, he sealed the deal. He sold me on. I'm not even. I've heard that. Yes, I've heard that.
But is that celebrity or business?
You're saying what now?
Elon Musk sat down with
Elon Musk did Rogan.
Elon Musk did an interview with Joe Rogan.
He did it like 2 or 3 days ago. And everybody was saying how they was like, yo, he sealed the deal for Trump. I don't even know what he said.
I would go back to my earlier point about the dumbing down of the American electorate when Joe Rogan is your go-to person who can convince you to vote one way or another, joined by Elon Musk.
I'm literally rolling on the floor laughing. One's the smartest and richest person on the planet, and the other is the biggest podcaster out there. And this lady calls their influence the dumbing down of America? How full of yourself do you have to be to say something like that? Honestly, with voters like this, it's no wonder Kamala got so many votes. 20. Canadian broadcaster. We've had a wild ride so far, so let's cap it off with some international flair. Let's head north. This Canadian broadcaster is suffering from an epic case of Trump derangement syndrome.
About the propaganda campaign and the playbook of Trump. This is not new. This is not surprising. This is directly out of Hitler's playbook. This is out of an autocrat playbook. This is a way to, the things that Trump has done masterfully, frankly, is to get the entire, to get a big part of the population to believe that the game is rigged and to sow distrust in public institutions and the free press. That is a tried and true playbook that we have seen time and time before that has resulted in really disastrous things for society. And that is what's working. And so it's actually quite simple. When you tell a big enough lie over and over and over, people are going to believe it.
All I can say is, get well soon, lady. But it's always entertaining to see how far the obsession goes. And there you have it. 20 of the most epic media meltdowns over Trump's 2024 victory. They are almost as entertaining as the election itself. Thanks for watching.